Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Elephant giving an iris, and I'm going to be sipping on a little Pinot Grigio. And if you enjoy this video, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you'll find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so what I'm going to be using for my materials today is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. You could certainly switch up the size if you'd like, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'll be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, green oxide, Mars black, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, deep yellow, and fire red. And of course you can switch up those colors too if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and then I have 3 brushes today. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a 1/4 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large throughout the painting process. I'll probably call them out by their names too, but if you hear me call small, that's this one. But those are the brushes I'll be using. You can certainly switch up yours if you'd like to. If you are painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I do provide you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the 2 different sizes of bristle brushes and all the good stuff in between there in the paint. So that's down there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're doing an outline for our elephant. We'll be using our pencil to do so. And just keep in mind we're just doing a basic shape of sorts that I'm going to be utilizing to separate the elephant from the background color that we're going to be doing as well. So we're not putting any details in at this point. I'm just going to give you a couple of markers. We're going to do a loose kind of sketch outline for it, and then we'll be ready for the next step. So what I'm going to first do is give you a couple of markers. We're going to go up in the top left-hand corner. We're going to come in maybe about 3 inches or so. You can make yourself a little bit of a marker up and through there. Then the next marker is going to be down at the bottom right-hand corner of your canvas. So you're going to come in from the right-hand side about 1/4 of the way. So if you kind of eyeball about halfway into your canvas, it's about halfway between there and the edge of your canvas. You can make yourself another little marker. And then you'll come and do the same thing over on the left-hand side. So this is going to be maybe 1/4 of the way, or maybe a little shy of 1/4 of the way, right in through here. And then I'm going to cut the difference between this and the end of my canvas and make myself another little mark, or somewhere in that vicinity. It doesn't have to be exactly where mine are, but somewhere in that general vicinity. I'm going to come up from this second marker in through here about, I would say, 3 or 4 inches, and to the right a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch, make myself a little bit of a marker. And then I'm going to go diagonal about 1.5 inches, make myself another marker in through there. And then we just have 2 more markers to go. The next one is going to come directly from the right-hand side from this one, just kind of travel over here. It can be right at the same height or maybe a touch higher. It's going to be maybe 2 inches to the left of this marker here, and almost at the same height as this one, so somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to come up diagonally to make another one. This is about 1/3 of the way up my canvas. So to figure out where that is, if you say maybe this is about halfway and this is about 1/4 of the way, it's somewhere in the middle of those two, or a little bit more than halfway or 1/4 of the way. and it's between these two markers. So if I come straight up between these two markers, it's somewhere in through there. And again, I'm just putting you in the ballpark. It doesn't have to be exactly where mine are. So the first mark of sorts that we're going to do is we're going to connect this marker to here. This is going to be the left side of the elephant's trunk. The trunk is actually going to be coming down the side of the canvas, and it's actually going to go out of view down below the canvas and come and wrap itself up around in through here. So this is going to represent that left hand side. So I'm in essence going to kind of go diagonal until I get towards the bottom, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve. So here we go. I'm going to do a little bit of a diagonal line in through here, and then just before I get to the end, I'm going to curve it to meet my marker in through there. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the rest of the trunk in through here. So this in essence is just curved lines going from this one to here and then this one to here. And you can kick it out as far out as you want to. If you want it to look a little bit more, you know, longer, you would have a deeper curve within it. And then on the end, I'm just doing a gentle little soft connector line. This marker is going to connect to here with a wobbly thing. This is the bottom part of the ear, so it's going to look maybe a little rippled or ripped in a sense of a way. So I'm just going to kind of give myself a little bit of an edge to the ear in through there. And this corner here is going to meet all the way up in through here. This is the rest of the ear. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to bring it down to, I would say, about this area of my canvas, and then just ripple it down to this point in through here. So this is going to just be a kind of a nice gentle rolly kind of wobbly line in through here, and then this is where I'm going to start to bring it back towards the right hand side. Now elephant ears can be very smooth on the edge. I think the younger the elephant is, the smoother the edge of their ear is. If they're older elephants and they've got more weathered years behind them, they can have rippled edges to their ears. Maybe if it's a male elephant, they've gotten into some territorial fights in their lifetime and have little tears and stuff along the edges of the ears. So you can have fun with the amount of ripples and edges that you, or little waves and stuff that you put on this. So here we go. I'm going to just kind of bring this down, and then just every now and again, maybe I'll put a little bit of a mark going in an upward fashion, and I'm going to keep it a little bit away from my my trunk, just so I have a good little bit of a distance in through there. And then I'm just going to bring it down into here. And that is all I'm going to do for the sketch of my elephant. We're going to use our large paintbrush for the next step, so you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our elephant. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a pretty dark brownish gray color, and that's going to be the base coat for the elephant. So I've already pre-mixed myself a little bit so you can see where I'm headed. I do know that I want to use some of my brown later, so I'm not going to mix all of my brown. I'm going to take a little bit of my brown and just kind of separate it out so I can use that later. And then I'm going to take the rest of my brown and I'm going to add a bit of black to it and just a teeny tiny bit of white. The white will really easily take over, so will the black. So I'm just going to add the black and the white a little bit at a time until I get my desired shade. I do know that this color will get darker as it dries, so what I'm going for is something that is definitely lighter than black, but I want it a little on the warmer side, which is why I'm adding brown to it. And I just am accounting for the fact that it will get a little bit darker as it dries. So I'm pretty much there right now. I think I want just a little touch more black in it. And again, if you make it too dark and it goes totally black on you, just bring a little bit of white back, you know, add a tiny touch of white. And if it goes really gray on you with the black and the white, and you don't have much warmth in it, that's okay too. There's many different shades of elephants, and mine is probably even a little bit more on the grayer side than the normal elephant is. So that's about where I'm headed with my color. So once you've got maybe a tiny bit more white in it. So once you've got the desired color, there is no special brush stroke involved to paint in the base coat of this. You're just going to paint it. So you can use a up and down motion, you can use a left to right, you can use a circle. Whatever brush stroke works for you is fine by me. You may even find, depending on the type of paint that you're using, where I'm using acrylic paint, obviously, but I'm using a thin-bodied student grade paint, which tends to be more on the fluid side, and it can be a little transparent where you can see through the paint, which is going to mean I can see a lot of my paint strokes even if I don't want to on these first couple of layers. But I'm not terribly concerned about that in this stage of the game, because I know that we've got a lot of other things to do on the elephant itself with all of the highlights and shadows and different kind of texture that we're going to be adding to the elephant's skin. So if you don't get a perfect coat on this first layer, you could certainly do another layer or just let it ride, because we're going to be doing all of those other steps that will help to clean it up and to make it look nice and complete. And you can see I'm going a little bit slower around my edges, but I'm not terribly concerned about my edges being perfect either, because I do want them to have a really nice kind of natural look to them. I'm running out of paint. I'm going to add just a little bit more paint onto my palette here. And if you do need to pre-mix or mix more paint on your end and it doesn't turn out exactly the same color, that's okay. The elephant will take on, you know, many different shades of gray in depending on the light and all that good stuff. So if you do have to mix yourself a little bit more paint, that's all right too. And again, I'm just kind of going through the whole thing. And again, if you wanted to, after you get this one coat on here, if you feel that you want to do a second layer just to get a real nice solid even coat throughout the whole thing, you could certainly do that. Just let your canvas dry for a minute and just come back on top of it with a second coat. But again, it's not terribly necessary. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to do a second coat yet, but I might decide to do so if if I feel that my painterly eye is not happy enough once this dries, I might end up adding a second coat. But again, it's not terribly necessary to do so. And again, I'm just kind of going right down those edges. I am using a bigger brush, so my edges are going to be a little bit on the rough side looking, but again, I'm okay with that, because that's going to make it look really nice and natural, and it's going to give it these cool edges to it. And then once you've got your first coat on your elephant's skin, oh wait a minute, I almost forgot the little trunk. So you bring the same color down into the trunk, and again, no special brush stroke here, just get that entire area covered. And then we're going to be using this same large brush for the next step, but you will want to wash it and dry it. So once you've got this layer on here, you can take this large brush, wash it, dry it, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using black paint. So again, there's not going to be anything fancy about this. I'm just going to bring it right up to the edge of my elephant ear as well as the trunk. I do recommend, if after you get the background layer done, if it is a little streaky or if you've missed any spots, I will recommend doing a second coat on that, because we're not going to be touching the background again. This is a one-shot deal on this background. Once it's on there, we're going to be painting all of our other objects on top of it, and we won't go back to it. So if after you've got this done on your first coat, if you let it dry and you say, I'm not quite sure that, you know, it covered 100%, then I would definitely recommend doing a second coat. I tend to use a thinner layer of paint, so mine will tend to be a little bit streaky on that first go around because I am using a firmer brush, which allows me to move the paint, but it also, because I'm moving the paint so much, it makes it have more of a streaky kind of finish for that first coat. So I will most likely go back and do a second coat just to make sure that I have all of my little spots painted. Plus, when we paint a base coat like this, especially when we're using dark paint, we run the risk of seeing those little pit marks in the canvas once it's dry. When it's wet, when the paint is wet, it appears that we have painted the whole thing. And then when that paint dries a little bit, the little pit marks of the canvas may magically appear when you're least expecting it. So a second coat could definitely help to make those go away. And your second coat of paint doesn't have to be as thick as your first coat. Like right now I'm using pretty thick paint to get it on here, but when I go to do that second coat, it doesn't need to be as thick. I could even thin it out and have it a little bit more on the fluid side, just to make sure that it gets into all those little crevices and that it gets a full nice consistent coat throughout the entire area. And you can see I'm going a little bit slower as I get up towards the elephant's ear, and it might end up reshaping itself. That ear might end up reshaping itself a little bit on this step. So if you want to you know, manipulate yours so it looks a little bit different, now is the time to do that. And then we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your actually let's use the big brush for the next step. So once you've got this base coat on, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to be painting our contour highlights on the elephant. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and what this in essence is going to help us determine and to create on the elephant is all of the places that bump out the most. So the forehead is going to bump out, the little cartilage part of the ear up at the top will bump out, maybe the middle part of the ear will bump out, the trunk's going to bump out, where the tusk is going to be, that's going to bump out. So we're going to identify those areas by using a shade lighter of the gray that we had on the main, on the base coat and our large bristle brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that original gray color that I had and I'm going to make it, or make some of it, a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to take my bristle brush and I'm going to add a touch of white paint into it. And you don't want it too much lighter because we're going to be building even lighter highlights later. So I'm just going to go maybe a shade or two lighter than that. And if I find as I'm painting that, oh, I made it too light, I'm not terribly concerned about it because I can always dip back into my original gray to make it a bit darker if I need to. So once I've got my desired tone, which is somewhere in there, and again, yours doesn't have to be exactly like mine, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel so it doesn't, or on the side of my palette, so it doesn't have too much paint in the body of the bristles. If yours is overloaded and you don't want to wash it and wiping it on the side of your palette didn't really work out so well, you could always wipe it on your paper towel as well, just to get the thick parts of your paint off, because you don't need too much paint here. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers and we're going to connect those in a very light sketcherly way. I'm not going to be overloading my painting with a bunch of thick paint because I want to still be able to see some of that original background behind there. So at the top of your elephant, you're going to come over, if this is the center of your canvas, you can come over maybe an inch or two to the right hand side, or this equates to about a third of your canvas. So somewhere in through here is where I'm going to start that contour type line. This is going to be the edge of the face that we're doing. The next marker that I'm going to give you so we have a place to go is right about here. So this is about in the center of your canvas from left to right, and it's about a third of the way down your canvas, or maybe almost halfway up or down your ear, somewhere in through there. This is going to be the outside of the forehead, and it's going to come into the trunk. So this is outside of forehead, and I'm just really lightly kind of sketching this. I'm going to hit my marker in through here, and then this is going to come over to the right hand side and meet where that trunk meets the ear in through here. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel like this, and with those remnants, I'm just going to kind of get this line to lightly blend in with the neighboring color. So it doesn't have to blend in 100%, but I'm trying to get it so it's not a really firm line. I just want it to be more of a lighter tone and a soft line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give where my tusk is going to go. I want to give that a place to live. So if you need more paint on your brush, great, pick up a little bit more, but I'm just picking up a tiny bit on the tip of my brush. I'm going to create like a U, or an upside down U, I guess, from this corner here, and it's just going to go up in this fashion like this. So just a really light, I don't have much paint on my brush at all. And then what I'm going to do is from this corner here, I'm actually going to make a continual line that's going to meet up in this. It could meet the corner up here of your ear, but I'm going to bring it back a little bit. So I'm going to say it's going to meet somewhere around here. I'm going to be going in towards the where the eye is. So this is going to be kind of the outside of the trunk like this. I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve so it's not a straight line. And somewhere around the area that it pokes out the most here, that's where I'm going to start to curve it back into this area up in through here. So this is going to represent kind of the highlight for the eyebrow area, or where the top of the eye is, as well as that ear, the cartilage part, I guess. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but somewhere in through here. So I've got this going on in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with softening this line. I'm going to actually give this whole trunk area, or the tusk area where the tusk is going to be housed, I'm going to give that an entire light section like this. So again, I'm not using a color paint that is much lighter than my original base, but this provides me enough information that I'm going to be able to get those high spots and low spots throughout the skin. Around the eye, I'm going to do just a little bit of these circular type motions. And again, not much paint on my brush, just giving the idea of where I might have some wrinkles later without painting too much into it. I'm going to do the same thing on my trunk. I'm going to give these sketcherly kind of arcing highlight areas that are going to guide the viewer's eye into understanding that this is in fact a round object. And we'll be putting much more information in it later, but this is really just going to get the information of how that skin kind of is formulated on the entire trunk and on the ear and everything. I'm going to know that I'm going to have a couple of wrinkles coming up into the forehead as well, so I'm going to continue that curved line, but it's going to almost start to flatten out as I get towards the forehead. This is going to be my forehead. I want there to be a contour highlight in through here, so I'm taking that lighter color, and I actually added a bit more paint to my brush because I want this area to really be on the lighter side. We're going to add even more later, but this is just going to start getting the form of that forehead to pop out for us. So again, I'm still just using that lighter, that one shade lighter of gray that I created. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did with that forehead in different sections on this ear. So I just picked up more of that gray. I want my lightest part to pop out in through here. So that's where I'm going to put the most of that light color. And then I just kind of get it to fade out into the original gray. Something like this. I know I want it to look like it's kind of talking to this cartilage type piece up here. So I'm just getting that to blend in with one another. And I'm using almost at this point like a dry brush technique as I get it to blend into the neighboring colors. I do want some of these ripples in the ears to look like they pop out as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. Where I feel that I want a ripple to almost pop out, I'm going to put a lighter area. So if I want this area up here to look like it's buckling out, that's where I'm going to start that highlight. And I'll do the same thing coming down the entire ear, and you can put them really wherever you want them to go. This ear can be in whatever formation that you want it to be. It can have really a lot of places that pop out, you know, maybe a lot of places that are sunken in. So you can really just kind of dictate that all on your own. And then once you have enough places that you feel are popping out, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of the same thought process on my trunk. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit lighter on that top, and then I'll just kind of bring these curved lines going all the way down. My trunk is going to be well disguised behind the beautiful flower. So I'm not terribly concerned about how much detail I have on that tail. And same thing with this ear. I'm going to have a lot of it hiding behind that, that flower anyways. So you can go ahead and tweak yours as much as you want. And if you need to, you can go tap back into some of that original gray. But again, we are going to be doing additional steps, so don't worry if you still have some spots that look unpainted. We're actually going to switch brushes to the smaller bristle brush for the next step, which I think I identified earlier as your medium brush. So you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're painting our contour shadows. So I'm going to be using my smaller bristle brush because these are going to be smaller areas and I want to be able to control my paint a little bit better. I like these bristle brushes because I can, oops, I guess I have a dirty hand today, because I can move the paint really well with them and I can control my pressure on it, and I can keep that paint moving as it's drying, and I can get a nice blend with it. If you're using a softer brush, you might want to use more, make sure that your paint stays wet during these type of shading steps that we're doing right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this small bristle brush. I'm going to be using black. I will also use my original dark gray. And if I need to, I will tap into this lighter gray as well just to make sure that it blends, but I doubt I'm going to need to. But if you run into an issue where you've over darkened something, you can certainly lighten it back up with the lighter shade of gray. So I'm going to start in my bigger areas so it's easier for you to see and understand how the process is going to go. I have, I'm going to have a big shadow underneath here. I'll have a lot of shadow actually on this left side of the face to get this ear to really look like it's tucked behind the face. I'm going to have shadows all along the trunk. I'm going to have them on the edge of the ear, so they're going to be everywhere. But we're going to start up in through here and on the side of the face because that's where I know that they're the darkest, or they are on my elephant anyways. So I have a little bit of black paint on my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm rubbing it right into what I feel to be the darkest area in through here. And then I want it to fade out into this other area. So in order for me to do that, I can pick up a little bit of my original gray if I need to, or I can just kind of keep rubbing it until I feel that it has blended well enough. So again, it's all going to depend on what type of brush that you're using as to whether or not you can take that black and thin it out with almost like a dry brush technique to get it to blend into the neighboring areas, or if you have to bring some of the original gray into play. Now, there's tons of wrinkles around this elephant, so you do not need a clean line going down in through this left-hand side. The eye, where the eye sits, would actually, you could see little wrinkles that make their way into the ear itself. So you don't have to just do a really solid, clean line around the edge of the face. So as I go down the face, I'm going to bring my shadows up a little bit into that edge that I had created, and that's going to give me a really nice natural look to the side of the face with all of those extra special wrinkles involved. I know that I really want a nice deep shadow on the other side of this tusk, so I'm just going to kind of make that a little bit darker. And of course, if you reshape it in a way that you weren't totally sold on, you can certainly just bring back some of the original colors to help with that. I know I need some of my original gray here because it does not look like it's painted fully. So I'm just bringing back some of that original gray, making sure that it blends nicely in with that neighboring color. And then as I come down into the ear, we still have the top of the head too. I'll get to the top of the head in a minute. I'm down here, so I'm going to stay down here. So what I'm going to do, I know I have a big tusk coming in through here, but your tusk might be a different shape than mine. So just paint your ear without thinking about the tusk. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black on my brush. Of course, my dogs are deciding they would like to join the painting party today as well. So I just added a little bit of black. And then once I feel that I have enough shadow, you can add little shadows in the creases of your ears. So you can add a bit of black in through there or dark gray, whatever works for you. You just want it to look like it blends in with the neighboring color. So once I've got my shadow on there, I can pick up some of my original gray. And I'm not even really terribly concerned about the tips of my ears because I know that I will have a little final detail of highlight or something on those, or I can clean them up with a smaller brush if I need to. But what I'm really concerned about is just getting the entire ear painted and seeing if I can get some highlights and some shadows along those edges so it almost looks like it's curling over in spots. So maybe I've got a little bit of my black on my brush right now, just get in a couple of little darker areas. I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel and I'm picking up some of my original gray to get it to blend in with the neighboring highlights that we added on earlier. And again, if you needed to, you could add a touch of water to your brush. The water you can use it if you need to or want to, but sometimes when we're working with these darker colors, water in the mix can give you almost a look of the paint that is not true. So when you have water on your brush with these darker colors, it makes them look darker when they're wet. So you might be thinking that you're doing the color that you want, and then it dries and it ends up being a little bit lighter and you're like, oh, that's not what I planned for. So I just recommend if you do want your paint to be more moist when doing a step like this, just add more paint. You don't necessarily need to add water to your brush. And then that's looking pretty good to me. Whoops, that was a little bit of lightness on my brush. So once I've got that entire ear done, I've got some light spots and some dark spots. I'm going to start to move over towards the trunk and the top of the elephant. So I do want to have almost little wrinkle type things on top on this part of the ear that is connected to the head. So I'm just almost doing what I did with the trunk, with giving it these like contour shadows, only I'm doing a little bit with the highlight and then just kind of blending it in a bit. I know I want this to look like it dips in a little bit above that ear or where it's meeting the head. So just a little bit of black and my original dark gray can do the trick for that. But the trick really is just don't have a lot of paint on your brush. And with these firm brushes, you can really just manipulate that paint and get it to go where you want it to. And again, we are going to be doing another step to this, but this is definitely just getting all of those little shadows in place and kind of telling the viewer where the parts of the elephant dip in with the wrinkles and with the shape of the structure. So I'm going to go ahead and do some of these contour shadows in the eye socket as well. So again, I just picked up a little bit of black, and my thought process is don't paint over the light spots because you already have your highlighted spots. I'm going to also do this where I want my eye too, because they have really small eyes with not much color to them. So I'm just putting almost like my eye socket in place right now, and I'm bringing some of these contour shadows just down in through like this little the little dip underneath the eye, something like this. And of course yours is probably going to end up looking older or younger than mine. They don't, depending on the number of wrinkles and depending on the formation that you have the wrinkles in, they all end up looking like either they're from a different region or that they're a different age. So, just really enjoy the process. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have every single wrinkle exactly in the same place as I have them. It's really just about giving the essence of these beautiful, majestic creatures and seeing if you can get yours to have some wisdom to it and some beautiful, maybe wisdom and sincerity and sweetness or whatever kind of personality you want it to have. I'm going to, I think, add a tiny bit of more paint on the top of this head just to make sure that it blends in well with that highlight that I had created. And if you end up adding too much or you want it to blend, I guess that was some white on my brush. Nothing a little bit of additional paint can't take care of. So just get that to blend in. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my contour shadows on that trunk. And let's see, that's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit more lightness over here. Sorry, I know I didn't say that I was going to be using lightness, but I ended up putting that head a little bit too light up here. So just adjusting it a bit. So there we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up again a little bit of that black paint on my brush to add these contour shadows on the trunk. So again, these are going to be where I kind of want the wrinkles to be, and in the shape of the curve of the trunk. I know that I'm going to have my trunk is going to be a little bit darker down at the bottom as opposed to up in through this region. So I'll add a little bit more darkness down here towards the bottom. I'm adding it in between where I had the light spots, so you don't want to confuse the viewer and put the light spots on top of the lighter areas that we just did a minute ago. You don't necessarily want to put these dark spots right on top of them, but you can put them intermingling in between them. I'm going to have a little bit of a contour shadow on the side of where my tusk is going to go. So this is going to be something like this. And you can see right now I'm just kind of using a real sketcherly type brush stroke in order to get these. These are in essence kind of the makings of the wrinkles that we're doing right now, the beginning steps of those beautiful wrinkles and all of the little bits of information that are going to be included in our beautiful little. Not little. He's not a little creature. He's a really huge creature. I'm going to add a bit of a contour shadow right at the bottom where my tusk is going to meet my the skin area. So just a little bit, not much, just a tiny bit in through there so it blends in with that skin. And then I'm just kind of creeping my way up the trunk. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly in a perfect order. I like to have mine have much more movement and a little bit of chaos. I am going to start to do some almost vertical type contour shadows because when I look at a lot of the elephants, they almost have this like little grid type pattern in their wrinkles. So I'm going to attempt to steer the viewer into seeing a little bit of that detail. So again, I just still have a little bit of black on my brush, still adding some of these left to right kind of contours, but now I'm going to start adding a bit of these vertical ones, and I can put them along the top of the tusk area, that housing of the tusk area if I want. I can have them coming up in through where that eyebrow area is, where it starts to meet that forehead. You can really put them almost anywhere that you want, but I'm going to concentrate mine more towards the top of the elephant, and it doesn't have to be a solid straight line. You can kind of skip it along a little bit. You can have them make a little bit on the curved side. I'm going to have a couple coming down in through here, and I'll show you how to make them look more natural as we add the little tiny bits of information into them in a little while. And so let's see. Oh, I need a little bit of contour shadows on my end of my trunk over here. So I'm going to just kind of follow the same thought process. I had a little bit lighter on the left hand side, so I'm going to put a little bit darker on the right hand side. And again, there's going to be hardly any of this trunk tip showing, so I'm just giving it the essence of the wrinkles, something like that. And then we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your contour shadows on here, you can put your medium brush away. This one of these steps I'm going to have a hard time stopping, but you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting ourselves the tusk. So I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use is that light gray that we created in the previous step, brown, black, and white. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a basic shape with just the light gray color, and then I'll show you how to give it some dimension. So I'm going to pick up some of my light gray paint with my small brush, and I'm going to give you a couple of dots, and then we're going to connect the dots, and we'll have ourselves a really cool shape by the time we're done. So right now you have your housing for your trunk in through here. So we're going to make 3 dots. One is going to be at the top of it, somewhere in through here. The next is going to be maybe about 2 inches below that same marker. This is going to be probably in your ear a little bit, somewhere in through there. And then I have another one right here, which is at the edge of that skin and about halfway between these two, somewhere right in through here. And then I have my 4th dot up in through here. So this is going to be maybe just a little bit to the left of your skin, and maybe up. It's almost up. It might even be just about up halfway up and down the top of your canvas and just slightly into the right. And again, yours doesn't have to be exactly where mine is. I'm just putting you in the ballpark of the size tusk that I made. You could have a really larger tusk or smaller or whatever you'd like. So, but this is where I'm going with mine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect some dots. I'm going to connect this one with this one with this one with almost like a J type shape or line. So I'm going to go from here, and I'm going to hit this marker down in through here, and then I'm going to bring it all the way up to meet my line up in through here. So yours might end up a little bit more curved than mine. Maybe I'll bring it a little bit less curved. Bring it in towards here a little bit. I'm making my line move as we're talking, so somewhere in this vicinity would totally work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this to the side of here, and I'm going to do that like this. And then I'm going to do one more line. It's going to be from the corner or from the tip here. I'm going to round this tip just a little bit, and I'm going to bring it back around and meet the bottom of here. So you want this to look like it's going into this line over here. So I'm going to bring this straight out, almost in a little bit of a flat kind of line like this, and then just curve it back up to where I'm going to bring it in a little bit of a curve up at the tip, and then back down in this area like this. And of course you can see I'm just kind of sketching it a little bit, and you can make yours, you know, as sketchily or as clean as you'd like. And then I'm just going to paint this in. I am going to mentally and visually try and keep my eye on this curve in through here, because that's going to be an important curve to know in a moment. So I'm just going to kind of color this in, give this a little bit of a rounded edge in through here so it meets that spot right there. And again, I'm just using my lighter gray. You could even leave a little bit of a separating point between these two. I'm going to paint them into one another, but I know my paint is a little bit see-through, so I'll be able to detect that original line anyways. And I know that I connected this corner to here, so I know that curve is there for me. But you'll see why it's important to know where that curve is in a minute. But I am just coloring this in with a base coat. I don't need it to be perfect. I am using very little bit of paint so it dries really quickly for me, because we're going to go right ahead on this same step and add all of the bits of highlights and dimensions. So without washing my brush, I'm just going to pick up white paint right now, and I'm going to give myself the brightest of the bright areas for this tusk. So for me, I'm going to have a really bright edge over on the left and over on the right side of this tusk, and it's going to travel to this corner in through here. So I'll tackle the left-hand side of the tusk first, so because that one's a little bit easier. I just have white paint on my brush right now, and I'm taking it all the way down this side, the left-hand side, and it's going to trail off or kind of blend in with the darker area in the middle. So just white paint for now, getting this to blend in with that middle area. And you can, if you want to, pick up some of that original gray just to get it to blend in a little bit. I'm having mine look really on the rougher side, that, you know, it's got a little bit of texture. It's going to have some good dirt on it and some good highlights, so it doesn't have to be really smooth looking. So then I'm going to do the same thing over on this right hand side. I'm going to add my bit of highlight over on this right edge in through here, and I'm going to get this to travel all to this corner right in through here like this. And I don't need a firm line, so what I'm going to do, you can either pick up a little bit of water on your brush to get this to blend into the gray area, or you can pick up some of that original gray just to get it to blend in. But when it meets the tusk itself, as opposed to just that exterior edge, you can get it to blend in a little bit with that neighboring color, and that's what's going to give it the dimension coming around this corner. I do want this interior area to look a little bit more blended as well, so I just picked up a little bit more white. And you'll find that as I'm doing this particular step, I just use a little bit of paint on my brush and just get it to gradually blend in with the neighboring colors. It's going to end up being the darkest down at the bottom in through here. I'm going to add some dirt on it in a minute, and up in through here as well. But right now I'm just kind of elevating this bright tip to a level of bright intensity that will make my painterly eye nice and happy, and that's looking pretty good right now. I just want to make sure that it doesn't look like a firm entry into the middle of the tusk, so I just kind of keep adding my white and my gray, almost in like a little polka dotty type fashion, or just rubbing it on there a little bit. Now I'm going to enter into this darker region in through here, so I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel, maybe with a little bit of water, and I'm going to start adding from black to brown to gray until it meets in through here. So I don't need much black, just a teeny tiny bit. This is going to give us our shadowy area over in through here. Now I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel, picking up a bit of brown paint and just getting those two areas to really talk well together like this. And then as I come over in through this area, I am going to wipe or wash my brush. I want some real dirt to appear, and the only way I'm going to do that is with straight brown. So I washed my brush to make sure that black was off of there. And I picked up some straight brown. There we go. Now we've got some nice, I don't know if it's necessarily dirt, but it's definitely a more, to me, authentic kind of color on that tusk. And then I'm also going to put some of this brown down here on the underside of the tusk. And I might add a little bit of darker gray or black along this bottom edge as well. And then this is one of those steps that I do recommend maybe once you've figured out or got as much on here as you want, definitely step back, look at it from a distance, because when we sit and are painting it, you know, this close to our face, we can't, it's really difficult to see all of the details that we've put in there. And sometimes just walking back from it and looking at it from a distance can really help us see a lot of things that we might want to add or subtract or revise. So definitely once you feel like you've followed my instructions the best as you could up, you know, 4 inches to your face, walk away, you know, look at it from a distance, go and, you know, go in the other room, come back a couple minutes later and see if there's any little modifications or adjustments that you want to make. The, you know, the magical part about this tusk is to make it look three-dimensional. And if you can accomplish that, awesome. Yours might look a little bit pointier than mine, or, you know, a little, maybe yours is coming out more direct at us, but if you can get it with a little bit of dimension, that's going to be awesome. And then we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got your tusk popping out as much as you want it to, you can wash and dry this little brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the eye and all of the wrinkles around it. So we're going to be kind of finishing this entire section in through here. I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors that I'm using are red, yellow, white, brown, and black. So all of my colors except for green are going to be what I'm going to be using. And just know that an elephant's eye can be super tiny and almost very hard to detect any detail in the actual eye part. Mostly what you're seeing when you're looking at elephants is all of the wrinkles that surround the eye and a little tiny dark spot where the actual eye is. I don't know why their eyes are so small and their bodies are so big, but that's the way it is. So I'm gonna have a little colored eye. Right around here, I've got a little marker in through there to show you where I'm placing mine. Mine's only going to be about 1/2 of an inch wide by 1/2 of an inch tall. And I'm just going to put it in place right now with some yellow paint. So I'm just adding yellow paint on my brush, and I'm just going to give myself a little circle here, maybe about 1/2 of an inch wide by 1/2 of an inch tall. Yours could certainly be bigger or smaller than mine, but this is where I'm putting mine and in the size that I'm choosing to put it. So again, yours might be a little bit bigger or smaller. And then I'm going to wash my brush. While that's drying, I'm going to go about and do all of my little wrinkle details. So for me, I've already really started all my wrinkles. I've got the light spots and the dark spots, but I want to kind of accentuate those. I also want to accentuate some of the skin above the eye. So I'm going to be using my light gray plus a little bit of white on my brush. And for me, when I'm doing these little details, less is more. I can always add more, but if I start by picking up a whole bunch of paint and just going hog wild and thinking I'm going to put all these bright spots and it's going to look magical, I might run into some trouble. So I put white and light brown or light gray on my brush plus a dot of water. And this is how I'm going to kind of determine where I want my lightest of my light spots. And I'm not going to overpaint it. I don't want to get rid of all of the detail or the light spots and the dark spots that I put before. This is just really intended to kind of accentuate and make little bits pop out a bit more. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown too, because I don't want it to go too white and kind of fight with the other lighter details on my canvas. So I added a touch of brown to the mixture as well. And then I'm just kind of accentuating some of those lighter areas that I've already deemed as the areas that are going to be popping out or poking out the most. And I just am adding just that touch of a lighter color throughout them. We'll be tackling the whole rest of the skin later, but this again is just kind of telling the story of what's happening around the eye. I think I'm going to add a bit more in through here just to get some extra little wrinkles along the edge of the eye where, you know, where I don't know what type of skin this is, but it definitely, again, can have tons of itty bitty little wrinkles or just some, you know, larger, softer ones. I do want the inside of the eye in through here, the eye socket kind of part, to be much deeper of a color, of a richer kind of color. So I'm going to add more brown and gray in through here as opposed to this lighter color that I'm adding above the eye. So you can see I'm just kind of having fun accentuating some of these little wrinkly areas. I'm going to start to add some of my darker gray and definitely some brown down into this area in through here. I think I need a little more brown on my brush. And just getting this to make sure that it looks like it's receding back and it's kind of sitting in a little bit further than this exterior part of the eye. So you can still have the wrinkles and you can still have a lot of information in those darker areas, but your tonal value has to be darker. So I can still have just as many wrinkles, I can have little skin around that eye, but I need it to be a bit darker than these areas that I want to pop out a little bit more. I do like to put a lot of little information and skin around, especially the inside of eyes. I feel that always tells a good dimensional story. So I'm making sure that I've put some extra little skin inside there, and then I can just go ahead and add any more little, almost, I'm just kind of doing these little streaks. I'm not really doing much of anything other than giving some bits of additional highlights and shadows. And if I feel that I want any wrinkles to look like they're even deeper, you can add a bit of watered down black paint to your brush and just get these little tiny skinny little wrinkles to just appear in the midst of the lighter areas. So I'm just I added a bit of watered down black to my brush, and this is giving me these really tiny skinny little wrinkles throughout this area. So you can have fun with those, and of course you can keep tweaking it as much as you want, but I'm going to go ahead and tackle the inside part, or finish that inside part of the eye. I still have that black on my brush right now, just making sure I have all these little bits of information around the eye that I want before I start tackling that interior part. So that's looking pretty good. And if you want, you know, the more wrinkles you put on, the older this magical beast is gonna appear. So have fun with the intensity of those wrinkles or the number of wrinkles. You are in control of the age of your elephant. So I'm gonna wash and dry my brush, and I'm gonna put the rest of the color on the inside. So I'm putting a tiny bit of black paint on my brush to put the pupil in place. I'm putting my pupil up towards the top of my eyeball. You could put it dead center if you want. I did see it a lot dead center, but I'm choosing to put mine up a little bit. And then I'm going to put a teeny tiny bit of red and yellow on my brush to give a bit of richness to this eye color in through here. So red and yellow is how I just added that on there. Most eyes that I see are typically going to be a little bit darker at the top of them because there's a little bit of a shadow from the eyelashes or from whatever else is above there. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm putting some brown paint on my brush to get a little bit of a shadow up towards the top of that eye. I'm going to put maybe a little bit more red on this left-hand side. I want there to definitely be a gradient in this eye so it's not just one solid color. And if you feel like you want it to be a little bit lighter down at this bottom, I just added a little bit of white and yellow on my brush. That's going to help it to pop out just a little bit more. And then once you've got it as colorful as you'd like, make sure your edges around it are are cleaned up. You don't want the eye to look like it's, partially in the skin, I guess. And I'm gonna just make sure I have enough little pieces of skin around it, and then I just need some eyelashes. So once I've got all of the skin around the eye that I want to create, I will put some eyelashes on. So I've got that. That's looking, oh, I need a twinkle in my eye first. Can't forget the twinkle in the eye. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I added a bit of white to my brush. I'm just going to put a little bit of a twinkle over here on the right hand side, covering a bit of my pupil. Now I'm going to put some eyelashes. So these eyelashes can be long, they can be short, they can be brown, they can be white, they can be black, they can be a mess, they can be in order. So you create your eyelashes the way that you want to, but most of the ones that I saw almost go in front of the eye. So I've got my small brush I'm using to start a little bit of watered down black paint so I can really get them in a slender order and where I want them to be. So I'm going to have them above the eye to the left, and they're going to come down and out like this. And of course you're not really going to see much when it's just black, but if you put a couple in front of the eye itself, that's going to definitely show some dimension. And then I'm just picking up either a little bit of the light gray or light brown or white, wherever your comfort zone is, and just putting a couple of tiny little highlights throughout those eyelashes. And if you feel like you've, done too much, you can always bring back some black. You can bring back, whatever you need to do in order to get it into the value that you want. And then we are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. Oh, we'll probably use our medium and our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your eye all nice and tackled, you can wash and dry this small brush and get your medium brush out as well. And of course you can keep tweaking this if you want. I might end up tweaking mine a little bit more, but when you're done with your eye, you can wash and dry your brushes and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our elephant with all the fine-tuned details that we're going to be putting on it. So I'm going to be utilizing both brushes, my medium and my small brush, and this is really, in essence, kind of putting all the deep crevices to any additional wrinkles that you may have, bringing these other wrinkles out or making them pop out a little bit more. I want to put a little bit more detail on my housing for my tusk, and I want to fine tune or bring the ear a little bit more forward. So, oh, and my trunk, just make sure that there's enough highlight and stuff like that on there. So I'm going to utilize both brushes. I'm going to be utilizing my small brush to do little tiny wrinkles similar to how I did around the eye, and then I'll be using my bristle brush to bring forward any pieces of skin that I want to be brought forward any further, or to get it to blend in a little bit. So I'm going to start with my small brush, and I'm going to use watered down black paint. So really I'm just taking my small brush and adding a couple of drops of paint to it. Throughout this process I will be using black both shades of the gray, the light and the dark gray, as well as brown and white. And I'll try and call them out as I use them, but I'm not always the best at doing that. But hopefully I'll get as much as needed. So I've got some watered down black paint on my brush, and I really want to identify if there's any additional little wrinkles that I want. So I'm going to use a really light kind of sketcherly type brush stroke wherever I want these little skinny wrinkles to be, and I feel like I would have some in through here. I know that I have water on my brush, so like I was saying earlier, when you're using black with water, it will look darker when it's wet because it is in essence kind of wetting the surface, but because you're using water, it's going to be more translucent, so when it dries, it will dry a little bit lighter. So it's kind of safe to do these wrinkles with this watered down kind of black combination because it allows you to see it as it's happening, and then it will fade a little bit into more of a natural kind of color once it dries. And if you do one that is too much, you can always dull it down with the original gray. So I've got that in through there. I think maybe I'll have a couple more coming around the top of the eye in through here. Maybe I will accentuate some of the deep ones that I already started throughout here. Maybe I've got a couple more just kind of making their way into this tusk region. And I suppose I could use a little bit of watered down brown paint too if I want some to be evident on this tusk housing. That's probably one of those things I should have really looked up before I did this video, but that's okay. The area where the tusk lives. Over on this side, I don't think I really need too much, just making sure that this area kind of blends in with my background. We're going to be putting a really faint leg in here in a second with the other brush, but I'm just making sure that I have all of my faint little details in through here with my watered down black or brown type paint, just to make sure that I've got all of those in through there. I don't think that I really need any of this in through here. I suppose if you wanted some identifiable wrinkles in the ear, you could certainly put a couple of these wispy kind of faint lines. That would definitely add to the dimensional element, or you can bring some little rips up on the edges of the ears. But once you've got all of that in place, I'm going to actually switch to my medium brush, and now I'm just going to fine tune all of my areas that I want to pop out a little bit more. So I'm going to obviously use my light gray, but I think I'm going to also use a little bit of white and brown on my brush as well. And this, I'm starting right here because I know that this is an area that I really want to be on the lighter side. And I'm using more brown because brown is going to bring it closer to you. So the warmer the color is, the closer it's going to kind of look to you, especially on top of a gray type background. So I used a little bit of brown and white with that light gray. And I think I'm going to pick up even more brown just to get a little bit of a curve, more of a curve around this edge in through here. And I'm hardly using any paint on my brush. I just really am looking to provide more of a three-dimensional look to it, and I don't need much paint at all to accomplish that. I want a little bit of a protrusion in through here, so I'm making sure that this is a little bit more on the lighter side, and I want my skin to look rough, so I don't want to smooth it out too much. So that's why I'm using this bristle brush. I don't have a lot of paint on it, and now what I can do is, as I'm moving towards that trunk area, I'm going to continue to utilize this bristle brush with my light gray, brown, and white, and get all of these areas to kind of pop out a little bit. So I don't have much paint on my brush, and I'm just looking for those lighter spots and just rubbing this paint on here a little bit. So I'm almost getting it to blend in a little bit more, but also have a bit of a highlight spot on the part where I want it to pop out the most. So this is just kind of a down and dirty, easy way to get these little wrinkles to come out even further. And if you want them to be even more in your, popping out even more, you can add even more of a highlight to them, maybe on one side or the other, like on the lower side or the higher side. So I want some up in through here to pop out a little bit more. So I'm just using the remnants of my brush. I can even create a bump on the fly. So this is looks kind of flat right now. If I just add a bit of highlight in through here, I magically all of a sudden now have a couple of dips in that skin. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. If I want this area to pop out a little bit more, I can use just a little bit of a lighter color and just rub it into those spots that I want to pop out a little bit more. I am going to do it on the top of the ear, but I want to get some in through this forehead first. And again, white and brown are predominantly my colors, with that light gray that are helping me to achieve this illusion of sorts that we're creating. So I am just very gently, I'm not using a ton of paint. I am delicately, but with a firm brush, adding these highlight areas. And you can see now I hardly have any paint on my brush whatsoever, but I am getting it to blend in with the neighboring colors. And then I'm going to kind of move over into here, and you can see how that brown really brought it forward. And if you feel like you did too much, you can always bring back some of that original brown or the lighter or original gray, that darker gray, and just get it to blend in a bit as well. So you can really continue to tweak these as much as you want, but I think I'm gonna where am I gonna move next? Let me finish the trunk so you can see all of that part. I am going to just add a couple more bits in through here to make sure that it is popping as much as I want it to. And again, you just keep elevating it with lighter colors. So if you want it to pop out a bit more, you can just add these little tiny bits of highlights throughout it. And then as I get down towards the bottom of the trunk, I want the bottom of the trunk to be a bit darker. So I'm not going to make that too bright. So I'm going to definitely be using my light gray, but I might not add too much more brightness to it, because I definitely want it to appear as if it's in the shadows a bit. So you can see how I'm just kind of fiddling with these little areas in through here to make them look like they've almost got that vertical look to them, the wrinkles and the horizontal look. So just the more I kind of add these layers of sorts with these lighter colors, that helps to give all of this dimensional information throughout these wrinkles in the face. And you can add more. Again, more brown is going to make it look like it's coming closer to us because of the warmth in that color. But I don't want to forget about down here, so I want to make sure that I definitely have this part attended to. I think when we go into the darker regions of paintings, we tend to not want to pay as much attention to them because they're they're in the dark. We're not looking at them as much, but they still require attention, and we've got to give them their due process. But I want to make this a little bit darker on the left. Just make sure that this kind of hides. Maybe a little bit of black will get this to, yeah, there we go. I just put a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. I definitely, again, wanted to have some wrinkles in it and have a little bit of information over here, but I don't need to do too much work. I can even just go a little bit in the vertical way to give it the illusion of some of those vertical wrinkles. I do want to put a leg over here, but I don't need to do much. I'm actually just putting a bit of my darker gray on here. I'm going a little bit to the left of the edge of this ear, or the right of the tip of that ear, and just bringing a little line down here. I'm going to pick up some black and just get it to blend in over here. I'm not doing anything really to this leg. I just want everybody to know that there is, in fact, more of the body than just the head. So we're just giving it the illusion of a leg in through there. That's all I'm doing for the leg. And then I'm just going to kind of make my way up that ear, adding bits of highlights. Again, I still want it to be kind of darker down here, so I'm not going to do much. I am going to be, that was a little light for me, so I'm picking up some of my original brown or gray just to get it to work its way in. I'm just really making sure that I have it finished. So if I have little edges that don't look done, then I'm going to, like there's a little edge here that doesn't look done, even though I know some of this is going to be hidden behind my flower. I just want it to look like it's done. I want to pay the same attention to the entire painting, even if I know that it's not gonna have a huge effect. I still want to make sure that I finished that part. I might not use as much effort or as much technique on it, but I still want to make sure every part of that painting has been finished. I want to definitely add some lightness up in this area of the ear, so I'm using my light gray with brown and white on my brush and adding a nice bright spot in through here, and you can pick up some of your original gray to just get it to blend in. Again, I'm using this firm brush, which really allows me to rub this paint in. You can use a touch of water if you want to, if you feel that your paint is not staying moist enough for you, or you're not able to move it around as much as you'd like to. You can also use an extender or a liquid medium within your paint just to make it stay open longer or stay wet longer. So whatever works for you. I typically am just using my thin-bodied student grade paint with a little bit of water in it, and that's usually my method of choice on these paintings. So again, you can really just use whatever you're comfortable with. I'm just making sure I've got these little crinkles in the ears all nice and finished, and then I'm going to get the top piece in through here, get that a little bit lighter, and then I need to hit my trunk a bit too, so I just got another little second here to finish this area up, and then we're gonna start tackling that beautiful flower next too, so I'm excited about that. So when you get up in through here, just again make sure it looks like it all makes sense, like it really all just blends together. Keep tapping into your original gray if you need to, or even your black, or whatever you feel is going to give you that illusion of this part of the ear popping out, or this part of the ear popping out. It has to have that lightness to it, or to show the contour of it, and to show that it is in fact coming out farther than the piece next to it. And then I think I just have above that eye, you can see I kind of worked my way around this beautiful creature, and then, or beast, I'm not, a mammal. I think it's like, I don't know if it's the largest mammal. I don't know. All I know is they're huge. It could be the largest mammal in the, no, maybe, I don't know if that's the biggest one. Anyways, so once we get this done, we're actually gonna switch to our medium part, our medium brush, and I don't want to forget about that darn trunk. I went around and I, again, just skipped this little bit of the trunk, and I'm going to blame it on, it's not connected to me because it's a totally different entity here. So I just added, my brown, white, and my light gray, and just giving myself a bit more of a highlight just to give it some kind of identity here and make sure it is not lost in the darkness of the background. And then once you feel that you've got this all nice and accomplished, you can put, I said we were going to use the medium brush. I really meant small brush. I don't use these brushes a lot in this demonstration, so it got my brain a little squirrely there. So we're going to use our small brush for the next step. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, do any additional tweaks that you feel necessary, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting the first layer of our flower. I'm gonna be using my small brush, and I'm gonna be using just red paint. So this flower that we're painting is the iris, and this is a symbolic flower for intelligence, which I thought would be super cool to mesh with our very intelligent beast, the elephant. So I've chosen to do red, a dark red and yellow rendition of this flower, but they come in all colors. So you could do white ones or purple ones or pink ones or whatever color you want to do, you're more than welcome to do. I just liked the red one. so that's what color I'm going to demonstrate it in. They're big. They have these big, huge, floppy, wiggly petals to them. And in my painting, my elephant is offering up this flower to somebody. So I'm making it very large because I want it to look like the elephant is, in essence, kind of handing it off to somebody or giving it as a gift to somebody. So I've made mine very large and very prominent in the painting. So I'm going to use my my small brush. I'm using red paint, and I'm going to make an outline for the flower, and then we're just going to paint it in with red paint. So I'm going to have my flower is going to take up this entire area in through here. We're going to see maybe 4 or 5 of the petals. So I'm going to have my first petal is going to be down in through this area, and it's going to kind of touch or go overlap the end of that trunk a little bit. And it's going to come all the way up maybe into this area. And I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush down the side a bit. And again, these are very wiggly. So if I say wiggle it a little bit a lot of times, I'm terribly sorry because we know that there's a song to that. So I'm going to, this is my front petal in through here. I'm going to just kind of make a little ripple underneath here. And I'm going to bring it down like this and up like this. And of course, when we paint this all in red, you're not going to really, the interior outlines aren't going to make all that much difference. But as I paint these in, I'm just going to kind of paint them in a directional type brush stroke. And because I have black paint underneath, or in some areas gray paint underneath, you're going to be able to detect the direction of that particular petal, which will be our cue as we go to paint in the painting or the petals. It'll be our cue as to where the separation points is. I'm going to have a little stick up one in the middle, because I'm sure that's the technical term for it. So it almost is like the top of a candle. Looks like the little top of a candle. And of course, it doesn't have to have perfect edges. You can ripple them like that. I'm going to have a petal coming out over on this side, so it's going to be really kind of ripply like that, and then just kind of tuck in maybe a quarter of the way down this particular petal. And as I'm doing this one, I'm just going to bring these my directional kind of brush strokes like this and just kind of go around this other one. And you can leave a little bit of a space between each petal just so you don't get them confused with one another if you want. I'm going to do one over here on the left hand side. So this one I'm going to start in through here, and it's just going to maybe dip down a little bit and come, I don't know, I'm just kind of wiggling it. I'm wiggling it a little bit as I go. And then I'm going to start up this one a little bit. And yours, again, don't have to be exactly the same size or shape as mine. And then I'm just going to bring my brush stroke out towards the tip. Again, this is just going to give me a visual cue that this is a different petal than that one. And then I've got maybe 2 or 3 more at the top. So this one I'm going to have coming a little bit higher than my trunk, maybe almost halfway between my trunk and my eye. And I'm going to have this one kind of swooping down like this and meeting in through there. And again, I'm just having fun with the way that I'm wiggling these. There's a couple of these petals that kind of go up it and kind of encapsulate this center area, and then the other ones kind of just lay down and flop over the sides. So that's how I'm interpreting this to be. And then this one's going to kind of just come over here and wiggle and wiggle. Wiggle it just a little bit. Wiggle it just a little bit. I want to see you wiggle it. Just... There we go. And then I'm just going to bring my brush stroke down towards that center. And again, this is just going to give me that visual cue of this being a separate petal. And because we are painting on such a dark background, this red will get much darker as it dries, and I've planned for that. So as you're watching yours dry and it's getting darker, just know it's all right. And then this last one is going to be maybe a two-parter. I'm going to have it kind of coming up in through here and just coming. We're going to bring this one, swoop it in through here. This is going to be a really wiggly one like this. And maybe this meets over here, and maybe we see the other side of this one too. We'll get this one to come over like this. So this is going to be one petal, but we're going to see the inside and the outside of it. So I'm going to, on the outside piece, just paint it lightly. I'm not using a lot of paint. And then on this inside piece, I'm going to leave this center area kind of black like this, and then I'll put it brighter up in through here. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. And you can see how I've left a little bit of space between each petal, so that way I can, one, there's going to be shadow in between them, but two, that gives me a good way to separate them when we go to paint them and paint the rest of the details on. So I'm going to wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing our stem and leaves for this beautiful iris flower. I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors I'm using are green, yellow, brown, black, yep, no red. All the other colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with green paint. The leaves on these flowers are very long and straight and thick. Think of a really big piece of grass, and that's in essence kind of what they are. You don't need them to have a lot of movement to them or a lot of wiggle to them. They can have a little bend and a little curve, but you don't need them to be super wiggly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it placed in a way that makes it look like it makes sense, like the elephant is holding it. So I'm going to start with placing my stem where I want it to be. So if this is the center of my flower, I want it to kind of have a little bit of movement in through here, and it's got to be pretty wide because that's a big, huge flower. And then I'm just going to kind of bring it in a little bit of a curve down in through here. And I'm going about 1 inch wide right now because I'm going to build my leaves off of this as well. And the leaves are going to, in essence, kind of hide this, but this gives me that stable base to start from. And then I'm going to decide where I want those leaves to be. So I'm going to have one coming maybe up in through here. And this one's going to go right into my stem, something like this. And I'm going to have most of my leaves at least a 1/2 inch wide. Some of them might end up being like 1 inch wide, but they're all going to come in a way that looks like they're coming from this stem. So this one maybe is going to come over in this direction. This one might be a little bit too wiggly, but that's okay. We'll just roll with it. Maybe we'll go a little bit firmer like this. And I'm using a good amount of paint on my brush right now, just so I can have a nice base for my highlights and my shadows on these pieces of leaves. I'm going to put one coming in through here. And again, they don't have to have a lot of movement to them, but if you can have a little bit of bend, that's great. And if you can get one to come out at a little bit different of an angle than another one, that's awesome too. I'm going to have a pretty straight one coming in through here. Maybe this one is going to have a much, I think this one's gonna maybe hide, the tip of it's gonna hide behind this flower. There we go, and get this to go pretty wide out in through here. And then I think I'm gonna have one more coming off of the base of this stem, and then I'll have maybe one or two kind of up in this top left region. I think I'm gonna have one come in front of my ear a bit, adding these little elements of like a leaf going in front of your object behind it. That adds that, again, those visual cues or that dimensional element that if it's not there, the viewer might lose the idea of what object is in front of the other. So if you can tell them distinctly, yep, this is in fact in front of that ear, by just overlapping it a bit, that's a very easy way to add those elements that that give the viewer the cues. So I think I'm gonna have one coming behind the trunk a bit. So I'm gonna sneak a little piece of green back here along this edge, and then maybe it's gonna skip over or behind this bit of my petal, and I'm gonna have it coming over into this region. I think these two are going to cross over each other at some point, which it works for me. We'll have that one going in front of that one. Excellent. And then I think I'm going to have one more kind of poking its head out back here. So maybe this one comes in through here, and adding this green next to the red along these edges also adds that spatial visual for the viewer as well. So it allows them to make this flower is going to now look more three-dimensional, because you're putting some of the pieces of the stems and the leaves and stuff behind it. So once you have your green on there, you just need to add little bits of highlights and shadows. So I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a bit of brown and black to add some shadows. So I have shadows are going to be down below on the lower side of these leaves, as well as in between the leaves. So I've got an interior portion of a leaf in through here. So I've got brown and a little bit of black and maybe a little bit of green. Just be careful not to overdo it or make it too dark. I want some back in through here. So green is my main color, but I want to, if I want it to look like it's in the shadows, I can add a bit of that brown and or black just to make it a little bit darker, and then go ahead and add any little additional pieces in through here. I'll add my highlights in a second, but I just want to make sure that I've got some good shadows on there first, maybe a bit more brown to get this to look like it is set back a bit. And this is one of those steps, adding these highlights and the shadows to these pieces of stems and grass and stuff, that you can make really intense or really subtle. If you want it to, you know, look like it's not taking away any of the focal point, then just make this green stuff fade into the back and make it a little bit darker. If you wanted to steal some of the show, then make it a little bit more brighter and have higher contrast in your highlights and shadows. So I'm going in for my highlight, which is going to be primarily yellow and white, and I'll probably add a bit of green too, just to make sure that it blends in well. And my highlight is going to be on the top tips of the pieces of leaves, but I'm not going to overdo it. So I definitely want to give the viewer the information that the light is coming from above, but I don't want these, again, to take away from the star of my show, which is going to be my elephant and the flower itself. So I'm just kind of adding these in a nice subtle way, and then I'll just kind of keep tweaking it until I've got them as blended in as I want, as, you know, as dimensional as I want. And I am going to add a tiny shadow of them on the elephant's trunk too. So once you've got them in place, I'll wash and dry my brush and just add a tiny shadow of them onto the trunk itself. And again, that's going to give that extra bit of a dimensional element. So I'm just washing and drying my brush real quick, and I'm going to put a little bit of black and brown and a touch of water on my brush. I'm going to add a shadow of this leaf onto the trunk. So it's going to, I know my trunk is a little bit, has a curve to it, so I can kind of add this shadow like this and then give it a little bit of a curve. And because I'm using water in my brush, you can see through it a little bit, and then maybe I'll have a bit of a shadow from this one like that. And then I can, while I'm here, just do a shadow of my flower on that trunk as well. And then we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got your stems and your stem and your leaves on, and any little shadows that you might want to have, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our flower. I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors that I'm using are red, yellow, and white, and a little bit of black. I might use brown too, but it might just be black for my shadow colors. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to make sure that I have enough of my shadows identified as I want, and then I'm just going to build my way to the light. So because we had a black background, we naturally have some already in place shadows because of the way that we left that little bit of space in between some of those petals. So because I already have a shadow in through here, what I just want to do is make sure that where my shadows are, they blend in with the red. I do want to put an additional little shadow underneath this petal because I want that to look like it's kind of flopping over, and I might put some shadows along some of the edges so they look a little bit more rippled. So I'm going to start with a bit of black and red on my brush at the same time. I know how powerful the black can be, so if I'm doing this and all I'm seeing is black, I recommend just wiping your brush off on your paper towel and picking up some red, and that will help you to blend the colors. So I'm going to start over here, which is where I'd like to have a nice shadow underneath this particular petal. So I'm adding black and red. I'm going to have this as like the little lip or the edge of the petal, and then underneath here is going to be nice and shadowed. So again, I have red and black on my brush right now, and I want it to blend in with the edge. So I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel and pick up a little red. So as in the areas that you want it to blend in with the vibrant red, you just want to control the quantity of black on your brush. So at any time you can just kind of wash your brush or pick up some red to counteract it, but I'm going to have a highlight edge on that one in a minute. So now I'm just going to reload my brush with red and a tiny bit of black to give myself any additional little ripples that I want. So I think I'm going to have one in through here where this petal is just going to kind of ripple along the edge. I think I'm going to have one in through here. I might need a little bit more black on my brush there because I can't really detect it as much as I want. So I've got my little ripple, but I want to make sure again that it kind of blends in with the red. So I'm going to pick up, so I wiped my brush off on my paper towel and I'm just picking up a bit of red just to make sure that my ripple blends in with the neighboring red. And of course we'll tackle the rest of the flower in a minute, just tackling my shadowy areas. So I think I want a little one over in through here, and then this whole one in through here, we're going to see the underside of this one similar to the one on the right. So I just loaded my brush with black and red to make sure that this underside is nice and dark but not totally black. So I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel throughout this process to get this darker interior area to blend a little bit with the exterior edge of that particular petal. And then we will have, like I said, that little that little lip along the edge, which will add much more dimension to it, but just getting that little shadowed area underneath. And then this one looks pretty good to me. It looks like it's got a nice shadow in through here, and it does nice. It looks like it's naturally blending in with the red on that side, so I'm not even going to touch that one. This one, I think I might add a little bit more shadow coming in through here, just a bit more, making sure that it blends in with that red. Same thing with here, just make sure that it blends this deep dark black area, make sure that it blends in with that red coming out there. These are all going to be edges of a beautiful little petal. Let's see, what about this one? I think I'm going to have a little bit of a shadow over here on this right little edge like this, and it's going to kind of, this is just going to be, again, just a little edge ripple that we're going to see. Maybe we'll see a little bit of it kind of tipping back towards the elephant up in through here. So any part that you want to dip in or tip over, you can just put a little bit of a shadow on it, and that's going to make it look like it's going off into this. I think actually I'm also going to make this area a touch darker too. I want this petal to sit behind this one a bit more, so I'm going to make it just a tiny bit darker in through here. Make sure that it in fact looks like it is sitting behind, or maybe even being shadowed by that one in front of it. And also making sure that that shadow blends in. Yeah, there we go. Now we're talking. And then let's see, what else do I got? I got a little shadow on the inside here, making sure that this all looks like it dips in and it's nice and dark. This is going to be really bright on the tip of that. That's looking pretty good. And I think that's it for my shadows. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to work my way towards the light. So my lightest areas are going to be the areas that pop out the most. This petal in through here is going to be leaning forward towards us, so my lightest area is going to be in through here and maybe along some of those little ripples. This petal, my lightest area is going to be in through here. This one, my light is going to be here, and I might have a little bit of highlight in through here because it's kind of full bending over towards the center. This one I'm going to have a light area in through here, and then this one I'm going to have here, and then this little center structure, not sure what the name of that is, but this little center area has a whole bunch of bright yellow and white little polka dots and stuff, so that's going to be kind of a highlight type area. I'm not just going to use red and white on the highlights for the petals. One, because there are some of these irises have a lot of yellow in mixed in with their red areas. Some of them have little yellow like spike things that come out the sides and in the middle too. So that's one reason I'm incorporating yellow. The other is I don't want it to go too pink on me, and if I was just to use red and white as my highlight color, that would make it go very pink on me, and I'm not necessarily wanting a pink flower right now. So I'm going to start with just red paint on my brush, and I'm going to make sure that where I want those highlighted areas to be, that they're really nice and vibrant red first. So I'm adding more red in those highlighted areas. So I've got some additional highlights coming in through these ripples, maybe along the edge, but I definitely want that red to be as vibrant as it can be. So because we started with a deep dark base, and red tends to be very translucent, the more layers of the red that you add, the brighter it will look. You almost don't even have to do anything other than add red, but if you want to have it really three-dimensional, you'll want to add some other colors. But the start of these highlights can just be with your red paint, because that's going to make it brighter even though you're putting the same color on the same color that you had done the first time. So again, I'm just adding more red in through these areas where I want the highlight to be, and that's going to start the vibrancy that will be the end result of these highlighted areas. I think I'm going to keep this one in this value because I like how it's nice and kind of set back like that. This one's going to have a lot of brightness in through here, and you can put your brush in a directional fashion. These petals can have kind of a striped type appearance to them simply because they're on the ripply side, and of course most petals have some veins and stuff going through them, so that that will assist in giving that appearance as well. In through here I want a little bit of texture, so I'm going to do this in almost these little dot type marks. We're going to have the yellow and the white adding to that in a minute. So once I've done that, I am just going to, I think I want this to blend in a little bit more. This shadow almost looks too deep for me, so just adding a little bit more red on top of it. And now I'm going to start adding my yellow and my white to the equation. So now that I've got that red on there, and this kind of curls back into the flower and through there, so that's why I've got it a little bit darker at the top. And if yours isn't dark enough at the top and you don't feel like it's curling back into the flower, you can certainly pick up a touch of the black and just get it to almost blend a little bit more just in this area, so you don't have a firm bright line around there. I probably should have mentioned that when we were doing the shadows, but it just was brought to my eye attention. So now I'm going to, because I just had black on my brush, I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to put some yellow and white on my brush to start the very vibrant highlights here. So I know that I want a big highlight in through this front portion of this particular petal. So just some yellow and white. And I don't want to keep it just like that, so I'm going to add some red to my brush and get this highlighted area to blend in with the rest of this particular petal. And again, I want that concentrated highlight to be at the area that I feel this petal is closest to the viewer. So that's going to be this area that kind of leans over in through this direction. And then you can just kind of rub it out and get it to blend in with the rest of the petal. And if you feel like you need to do more, you just kind of keep adding those bits of highlights until you feel that it is in fact bright enough. And if you run into trouble where your paint is just too wet in that one particular area and it's all just merging together for you, and you're not able to get those colors to separate and look like or to not necessarily separate, but if it's all turning into one color because you have so much paint, so much wet paint on there, what you can do is just kind of go on to another petal and come back to this one in a minute. So I can just kind of dance with my paint while it's wet here and get it to do what I want. But I know that sometimes when we're doing a particular process for the first time, or we're doing a method that we haven't done too many times, or using a different kind of paint or something like that, sometimes it might be a little difficult to control what we want. So if it gets a little bit too muddled or too wet, just kind of move on to the next petal, which is what I'm doing right now. This is the most difficult one anyway, so I'm going to move on to the next one. I have red, yellow, and white on my brush, and I'm really just going to kind of add these bits of highlights to the area of the petal that I want to stick out the most. So this is the red, yellow, and white, and just getting them to protrude a little bit more. This one's going to have a little bit in through here. This one will have a little bit in through here and maybe here. And again, if you do too much, just pick up a bit of that red and dull it down to whatever your comfort level is. But I really want these wiggly parts of the petals to just really kind of pop out and kind of come popping right off of my canvas. So I like them to be pretty intense, and I want this beautiful gift from our elephant to be as vibrant and as powerful as it can be. So I'm adding yellow and white to my brush right now to get this little center thing to pop out a little bit more. So I'm going to put some yellow and white polka dots almost in like just a little ball type structure down here at the bottom. Maybe a touch more red. I think that it needs a little red in there too. Yeah, that makes my eye happy. And then I'm going to put a couple of little pops of that yellow and white up at the top of this little thing in through here, just to get this to pop out a little bit more. And of course you can get yours to be as fancy as you want. You could, like I said, there's these plants have additional like little details. You could put a little bit of yellow and white popping out in any of the little sides that you want, and you can, you know, have some fun decorating this. And then of course just fiddle with it as much as you want until you have all of your highlights and shadows in place. I'm thinking that this is making me very happy, so that tells me I'm probably done. And then once you've got your beautiful flower, we are going to use this tiny brush for the next step, but you'll definitely want to wash it and dry it. Oh, see, now I'm just adding more excitement to my flower every little brush stroke that I make, but I will stop soon, I'm sure of it. So you can just wash and dry that small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be signing mine in the bottom left. I'm using my small brush. I sign mine with my initials. Oh, and I'm using the color of the original gray that we used for the elephant, so it's nice and subtle and it's nice and complementary. So I'm using my dark gray color. I use my initials for my signature, but you could certainly use your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like to be your identifying mark is totally fine. It's your painting. You sign it as you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very kind, beautiful elephant who's giving such a beautiful gift of a flower. And I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.